Welcome to this episode of Business PNG. Oil search is a name synonymous with the oil and gas industry in Papua New Guinea. Since its inception in 1929, it has grown to be one of the best in the business globally. Business PNG is pleased to speak with the Managing Director of Oil Search Limited, Peter Botten. Enjoy. Mr. Botten, thank you so much for speaking with us on EMTV. Again, it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
And always a pleasure to talk to you too.
Now, oil search has been in existence for 88 years now. For the last 2 decades especially have been a very exciting time for oil search. Now, in these 88 years, a lot of these years, oil search did not make a profit until when you took over as Managing Director of Oil Search. Now, what has been the secret behind oil search's success over the last 2 decades?
Well, firstly, I take no responsibility for the first profit because I arrived in July 92, just as oil was flowing from the Kutubu oil field, which drove Oil Search's first profit. My job originally was to work as a consultant to the board to help them decide where to spend the money that they were earning from Kutubu. And my first report for the company was to reinvest that money back into PNG, grow the business here, because the exploration and production potential here I thought was outstanding and you couldn't do better. So that was the gestation, and I suppose over the years we bought out BP out of the Gobi fields. We then subsequently bought BP out of the country, which was an absolute pivotal moment for the company. It was a risky deal for us. It was done at a time of low oil prices, and it was done where we were effectively buying BP out for $450 million US, and the company's size was $450 million US. So we were literally betting the farm by buying them out. But it set us up with the oil assets that we have to date, and also importantly the gas assets at places like Hides and in Kutubu. And that really was, I suppose, the platform on which Oil Search built its business, along with the merger in 2002 of Origin Minerals and Oil Search, and then the operatorship by buying out Chevron. So at various times over the years, we've had to stick our necks out, take some risk, and buy assets here. And frankly, we've done very well. In the last 15 years, we've shown, I think, 1,000% return on investment for shareholders who've been here that long. And I think it attests to the great potential that we have in this country and delivery of that, some of that potential.
Now, the performance of Oil Search has been particularly special, given that most of your operations are based here in PNG, whereas the others are multinational companies. Now, there are some challenges in operating in Papua New Guinea. How has Oil Search overcome these challenges to remain as profitable as you are at this point?
Well, firstly, I think we genuinely understand how to do business here. This is our backyard, and we've been here, as you say, some 88 years. And that means we should understand it by now. I think some companies don't work well here and they don't therefore be successful, but I think when you try and understand the place, understand the technical challenges, the logistics challenges, moving things around in the highlands and the Gulf, but also the people, understanding the diversity of our landowner groups from Hides and now Muruk and Pinyang down to the Gulf. It's very important to understand that. And it's also very important to have a very large percentage of our workers, national staff, because they understand better than anybody about how to do business. So we're a niche market player. If we were in Australia, we would not be nearly as good and as effective because we specialise here. But also we're very passionate, because if something goes wrong here, everything goes wrong for us, and therefore we have to make things work and have to be successful. But I think we've got a good model on how to do it and a good track record.
Now, in recent times, oil search has become a name that is synonymous with the new LNG space in Papua New Guinea. How has this added another dynamic onto oil search's business?
Well, obviously it's added very significant and, dare I say, profitable production. So we had a very substantial 60% share in the oil fields, and we were able to continue to find more resources and produce more oil than Chevron, the original operator there, ever thought was possible. But the real landmark for us as a company, and also I think for PNG, was when PNG LNG was commissioned. It's been a stellar success since its startup. It's producing well above nameplate capacity. It's more than doubled our production base, and it's even at a low oil price, is still making some money. I should say it's a real tribute to the operator, ExxonMobil, but also the government, who had the foresight and tenacity to actually see the project through. And right now, that project is a world-renowned, well-regarded, it's regarded as one of the best LNG projects in the world, and I think that's a tribute to how PNG built it, helped build it, and participated in it.
Now, PNG is viewed as a challenging environment to operate in for business in general, but for businesses within petroleum and energy, it's even more difficult given low world prices at this time. Yeah. But how is Oil Search working around this to make sure that PNG remains an ideal investment destination?
I can honestly say I think the future for PNG is better now than I've ever seen it. There's a lot of work to do and a lot of sensitivities around that, but we have more than 10 TCF of gas, we believe, to apply to a new LNG development, and that's more gas than we had for the initial project. And let's face it, the second project, an expansion of the first, it should be easier than the first, and more effective, more capital effective, and should be more profitable. I think that there are some challenges around that, obviously. I mean, I think at the moment, the view in the country that I see is that there was a greater expectation of benefits coming back to the country. And I think that's right. I think we all thought that we would all see a higher level of oil price, which would lead to higher levels of revenue for the state, higher levels of revenue for our landowners. That unfortunately is not the case. We're sitting at $50 a barrel and likely to see that continue out for quite a number of years. So the revenue stream is the revenue stream, but it's still a profitable project. But the future is the next one, and I see a very, very vibrant and active business and industry for 40, 50 years out. So generations of Papua New Guineans should be brought up in a country that has significant revenue stream from oil and gas for many years to come.
All right. Now, are there some lessons from PNG LNG that you'd like to build on in Papua LNG?
Oh, look, I think there are many experiences from PNG LNG that can be extrapolated into the Papua project. I think there's a real need to get the landowner benefits right. I think you have to bring the landowners along with you in any development. I think the industry and the projects themselves have to demonstrate and show the value that they bring to the country, not just in royalties and taxes, but also playing a part in the development of the nation, development of the country, helping government deliver services and infrastructure. I think this is a total package here, and I don't believe that you'll be successful in new developments without addressing yourself to those. There are lots of examples of how you can become more efficient in delivering infrastructure. I think cooperation between the two projects, cooperation in use of jetties and tanks and other camp infrastructure is really important. It's a lesson that wasn't learned in Australia in their last phase of development, but something that should be done here. But I think the most important thing is that you work with the government, you work with the landowners, you ensure that it's a fair deal for all parties. And frankly, although it's challenging in an oil price regime and an oversupplied LNG market, PNG is still very competitive as long as we take those lessons that we have learnt from those first projects.
You mentioned dealing with communities. Now, Oil Search is a leader in this field. Your involvement within communities where you operate is second to none. What is the secret behind maintaining this sort of relationship over a long period of time?
Well, I think it's that sort of those relationships are built in the DNA of the organisation. So there's never one person that does it. It's a group of people who understand how relationships are so important to the company and to the success of our future. So I think firstly, you've got to understand the people. You've got to recognise, I think we do that very well, what's important to them. I think it's almost impossible to sustain a major gas business in Hela without addressing power to the people who live outside the fence at Hela. So if you're sending billions of kinas of gas to Japan for power generation and our Huli brethren and sisters are outside the fence, don't have power, I think it's quite natural that would cause a problem. And the same for the hospital in Tari. I think if the hospital doesn't work and the Hulis don't have a major hospital in a gas-producing province, there will be a problem. And that's one of the reasons why we think it's very important to play a role in power distribution, for provisions and helping schools, provision of health services. And I think, frankly, it adds to our business, adds value to our business, because it gives us opportunities that we wouldn't necessarily see in terms of investment, like in power. But it also provides us direct contact with our local communities. And it's the right thing to do. It's fantastic to go into Tari Hospital and see the difference that Oil Search and our foundation has made in partnerships with others to delivery of health services to Hela. It's the right thing morally, and as a person, that's what we should be doing.
Now, to date, close to 300 projects have been delivered at a cost of over $1 billion kina. Much of this has been channeled through Oil Search Foundation, but as a business, how do you find a balance between supporting these community initiatives at such a high cost and maintaining profitability? How do you strike that balance?
Well, you see, I think if you get the community issues wrong, you get your relationships with government wrong, you don't have a business. So in reality, I don't see it as a particular cost to our business. I see it as a fundamental of our business. Other people build lots of fences and spend a lot of money on security. Our preference is to have a fence around our compounds and our facilities as we need to. But frankly, the fences keep the dogs and the pigs out. They don't keep the people out. What keeps us operating is a good relationship. Don't always get it right. Some people don't like us, inevitably. But at the end of the day, if you do the right thing and provide them with services and provide them with what I would expect if I was sitting in their village, if you can help government do that, then you have a great business model, in my view. And I don't think the cost is minimal in our overall business, but the results are so important.
Now, Oil Search Foundation, it's a wonderful story, and Oil Search has chosen to invest 125 million kina over 5 years. Just on the foundation? What are its key priorities, and what are you looking to get out from the foundation? What would you look out for?
Well, the foundation has got so many dynamics. It's got the dynamics of, again, provision of programs which address HIV, TB. It's got programs that empower women in this country, a very, very important part of our core business and DNA. We see in Hela really some terrible things in terms of violence against women, violence certainly, but violence against women especially. And those programs are absolutely essential in, I think, an education process of, but also helping women that are impacted by that violence. It does library programs for preschool kids, and that's tremendous to watch a kid in Tari who's learning to read, and outside there's a huli warrior sitting there doing the same movements that his kid's doing inside. It's empowering the community and educating them in a way that will hopefully set them up for a much better future. There are many dynamics, I say, for the foundation, and there are so many programs that they're involved in. It's a real privilege to be part of it and watch their work. And they're hugely dedicated people that do this, and the impacts in terms of vaccinations, in terms of measurable impacts in the community, is just been outstanding in the relatively short time it's been going.
Oil Search has completed over 120 projects since 2002. How do you select these projects? What is the process?
Well, I suppose firstly, we don't select the projects. The projects are selected by, dare I say it, usually politicians who can then go to the Department of Planning and to Treasury and have those projects endorsed such that we can offset tax that we would normally pay to build build buildings, build roads, build schools, etc. So we don't choose. It really is, I suppose, a choice of government as to where those tax credit projects might go. Again, we think it's a very effective, efficient way of delivering some of that infrastructure. It's done using our extensive project management skills and construction skills, and can be done in a very cost-effective way, but it's not our choice.
All right. Now, in recent years, we've seen the refurbishment of Semana Super House, the national football stadium, which is the best in the Pacific, and as well as your commitment to developing APEC House here at Ella Beach. Now, these facilities, who manages them after these events are completed, especially for APEC House?
Well, Semana Super House is now managed by the government, and obviously it's very good to provide a cost-effective building for government to do its work, and that refurbishment, I think, has been very successful and does represent a very good place, I believe, for the various government departments to work in. The National Football Stadium is part of our commitment to rugby league, and we took on because we thought it was important the maintenance of that through primarily, obviously, the Lloyd Robson Trust, of which I'm chair. But at the end of the day, we know that quality infrastructure needs maintenance. If you're running a sporting stadium, the grass surfaces, the changing rooms, everything needs to have a certain standard, and we think the NFS is a world-class venue. That's certainly the feedback we hear from international players coming here, and it needs to have upkeep. So we as Oil Search put in significant money into the NFS. Who's going to look after APEC House is still to be finalised. We'll see over the next 12 months as to who's going to take it on. Our job right now is to build it to a certain standard. I'm pleased to say that construction activity is going well, and I think it will be, as Prime Minister says, an iconic building which will help PNG on the world stage of APEC. But at the moment, we certainly haven't committed to ongoing maintenance.
Now, to the National Football Stadium, it will be a hive of activity in a few months' time with the Rugby League World Cup coming to Papua New Guinea. Oil Search is a big part of this. You've just announced your sponsorship of the national women's team as well. Can you give us a few details about this support towards Rugby League?
Well, look, obviously our primary support through Rugby League initially is through the NFS and what we do there, and that's a great venue for to watch the Hunters and other local competitions play there. The World Cup, though, is very exciting. I mean, it's obviously the first time World Cup's come to Papua New Guinea. We're very much looking forward to first the Prime Minister's 13 playing Australia, but of course now the Orchids, the PNG Oil Search PNG Orchids, playing the Gillaroos as a pre-game to the men's game, and our commitment to supporting the women's game in this country through sponsorship of the Orchids and indeed the whole World Cup is to, I suppose, bring as much rugby league, the national game, to the people of Papua New Guinea. It is the passion of the country. It unites the country in almost no other way, and having both men and women's teams playing here. Unfortunately, the women's team will be play all their games in Australia, but again, we're sponsoring, I think, with EMTV to bring the women's games to the people of Papua New Guinea so they can watch their women play in that competition. Fantastic opportunity again to put PNG men and women on the world stage.
Now, if you were sitting on the sidelines come game day for the Prime Minister's 13 match, what would be the likely scoreline that you'd hope for?
Well, I'd want PNG to win. I'd do 40-0. That's what I'd like to see. But look, it's a fantastic atmosphere when you see Australia play up here. It was a shock to me, though, that it probably shouldn't have been, but it was a shock to me to see that the PNG supporters at the ground actually were cheering almost more for the Australians than they were for Papua New Guinea, because obviously the names are on TV, they see them every day, and it was fantastic to see them. And I must say the feedback from the Aussie players when they're up here in their interaction with PNG supporters and supporters of rugby league was just outstanding. They are just really blown away by it, and it's a fantastic thing to watch. So it's a great venue and a great experience, and we've just got the Australians, but I think we've got a really good chance of doing very well against the World Cup teams coming here, Ireland, USA and Wales, I think it is, yeah. So I'm looking forward to those games as well, and I'm sure that they'll all be sellouts, and I wish we had a few more seats, but reality is times are tight.
Now, looking forward, the topic within the business community is Papua LNG, as you've mentioned. The timelines are still not confirmed yet. As a participant in this project, what would be your desired time frame to have this project up and running and production to begin?
The PNG has the ability over the next 5 to 7 years to more than double the LNG production. We have the prerequisites here. We have a lot of work to do. Papua LNG is a critical part of that, but equally, further expansion and optimisation of PNG LNG is also part of that. Look, I think in reality, I think we would be hoping for a final investment decision sometime in 2019. I hope it's very early in the year, but there's a lot of work to do. And I think that would give us production in a sort of 2023 type time frame. Maybe a little earlier, maybe a little bit later, but big projects, there's a lot of work to do to define that further. What I do genuinely believe, though, is that big projects, these projects are potentially viable even in this market. I think, again, emphasising we have to work with government, our partners have to work with government to get the balance of value, the fiscal issues right. We have to work with our landowner groups to get that right, bring the country along with us in the development. But when that does happen, obviously significant investment comes to country, especially during the construction phase. We estimate over 20,000 new jobs during that period of time. And some of the economic challenges that the country face can be addressed by these sorts of developments done in a responsible, socially realistic way. So look, we're really excited. It's really is a good time, but as I say, we have to bring the country with us when we do these next projects. The landowners, we have to ensure the benefits distribution processes work. But I do believe we're all up for the challenge.
Now, over the past 2 decades, Oil Search has gone from strength to strength. How do you think your competitors view Oil Search? Are they afraid of Oil Search Limited?
Look, I don't think anybody should be afraid of us. I'm sure they're not. I mean, but at the end of the day, I think most of our peer group respect us. I think the combination of locally based companies such as Oil Search and now Kumul Petroleum, a very good company on the local scene. That combination, I think, is very strong, especially when aligned with the major companies such as Total and Exxon, who bring substantial investments. They bring really outstanding world skills to developing resources in PNG. And when you combine those skills with the local skills and understanding, it's a very powerful combination. We all do things differently. And I fully admit we don't always get things right. But at the end of the day, I think our track record as Oil Search and what we do here is we're very well regarded. I think our social programs are seen to be world leading and how we interact. But there's still more to do. But I think we're a pretty good competitor to some, but equally a very good partner to others.
Now, they say the recent past is a good indicator of what can be expected in the future. The next 5 to 10 years for Oil Search, if you're still around, what would you like Oil Search to be?
Yeah, good question. Look, there are a number of challenges we have to address. As I say, I think the rocks are great. I think we're pretty good at getting them out of the ground. I think the real issue here we always must look at is making sure all our stakeholders are with us. And that's working with government, getting the fiscal regime right, getting the landowner benefits right, and bringing the communities along. The risk to our business is not that we won't find more gas or oil. It's that we stuff something up with the community and the communities do things that stop us doing our business. And that, I think, is something that we need to address all the time, every day. We don't get it always right, but as I say, we need to get it right now. And the opportunity here is really outstanding. And to work with such a young nation and with such a burgeoning population of young people, giving them jobs, making them oil and gas experts as well, but also other projects right across the country is the challenge. But I think we'll do it.
All right. On that note, Mr. Botten, it's a pleasure talking to you.
Great to be here. Great talking to you.